Okay, this is the retro ornament tutorial. Here is the template that Jamie gave us. And when you open your file, you'll have this, and you'll also have these. I want to show you how to make these outlines. And also I want to show you how to use the template. And then I'm going to show you how to do it without a template. So the first thing you want to do is you want to center to page. That's actually the first and last thing you want to do. The reason you're doing that is you're lining up these circles. When you actually put it on your mat, you also want to do the same thing. Don't forget to remove the number 2 platform. It's very important. And don't forget to put it back when you're done. That's something I do. So I'm going to show you how I made these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Select Trace Area. And I'm going to put a trace box around this. We're going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put the low pass on 1 because it tends to simplify things. And then I'm going to put the high pass on 5. Sometimes with a really fine line that works. Now I don't want it this thick, so I'm going to take the scale all the way down. If you do not have the scale button, take the high pass down so it's a little bit thinner. I'm going to trace. I'm going to pull it aside. Now I have an outline of both sides of that line. What I'm wanting is the inner one, so I'm going to release the compound path. We're going to zoom in. And I'm actually going to leave the bigger hole for the outside, but for this one I'm going to use the inner one. I'm going to zoom back out, and we're going to delete this little extra bit. I'm going to actually send the template to the back. And then we're going to make this a compound path. Next thing I want to do is I want to measure the actual ornament. I like to measure in millimeters. I think it's easier to be more exact. And that's what I did with these. Let's center this back up to page by hitting the center to page button. So with this one, it is 68.24 by 76.49. So that's not exactly what we've got here. So I'm going to make it 68. Very important. I'm going to take the shortish measurement, and that's the one I'm going to change. So I'm going to go up here to the scale section. Before I do anything though, I'm going to hit the lock button. What that's going to do is when I change one width, it'll automatically size the other one up. And this tracing is of an actual digital image of the ornament. So you always want to do that because the proportion on the tracing is right. So I'm going to change this to 68. And hit enter. And it's also going to change both sides. So that's how I created this image. I'm going to left the hole a little bit bigger because we don't want to fall in the hole. It's not an issue with this particular ornament, but it might be an issue with some circles and different things. So that's how you make your cut file image of the digital image. What I do at this point is I'm going to copy and I'm going to put it in a new file because I don't want to do my designing in that template file. So here I've got it, and the first thing I do is I turn the lines to brown. Brown is the color I use of something that indicates the exact shape of something, but it's never going to be cut. And we know with the ornament we don't want to cut. At this point I'm going to create what I call is a pattern shape. I'm going to release the compound path. And then I'm going to do an internal offset. And then I'm going to go up till it's not up there in the top. This is a really beautiful internal offset. I love this. And I like to be not too close to the edge. This is about 5 millimeters from the edge. I'm going to hit apply. Those of you that have taken classes with me before know we immediately turn the color to black. And we can thicken up the outside line because that's going to help for tracing. So, and I never thicken up the line for anything else except for this shape. So what we have over here is the shape that I'm going to put a pattern in. Now some things like words, I may not do that. I want to show you why I actually release the compound path first. I'm going to make this a compound path again. And this is when I first did the ornaments. I did this and it caused a bit of a problem. So now my internal offset is not symmetrical because of this little hole. So I wanted it to be symmetrical. It looks symmetrical, but it's not quite right. So that's why I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit undo. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this pattern. There's a bit of an issue with the sizing. So I am going to size to 300%. But when I go back, I'm going to go over here to the scale window and type in 33.33. Reason being is there's a little bug where 33 is not 33.33. It's actual 33, and so it won't size down to exactly the same. And when you have curves like this, it may make a difference. So check it. It's going to be fixed pretty quickly in one of the upcoming betas, but I just wanted to let you know that. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to show you how to put a pattern in this. That's my favorite thing to do. The patterns are very pretty and they're very nice to color with alcohol ink pens. I think this is a great thing to bring to a party. Adults and children both love to color. I had so much fun. They look so beautiful uncolored, but I had so much fun coloring them because adults just like to color just as much as kids do. So I'm going to increase to 300%. And here's why. Two things happen when you increase the size. It traces better, which is helpful. And it also fills better. It fills tighter. And the fill is really, really important. The tighter you fill, the longer it takes, but also the better the more vibrant the color will be. So the more I brush up the surface of the ornament with a sill tip or Amy Chomis's new precision tip, the better it's going to be. Now, if I'm going to leave it frosted, I actually like to use a tip that Jamie Omahan has at Craft Chameleon. It's something that fits in the CB09 blade, and it's a tip she made, and it's kind of an elegant tip. I'm using it also for portrait type etchings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my patterns directory. I'm going to click on patterns, and we are going to go down to where I have a lot of patterns. The only way you can use this is if you actually have the designer version of the software. You could take any pattern you have, put it into the patterns directory. Let me show you where there it is. So that's right here, not the library, but patterns. And what you do is you open up. Let me show you how that works. And we're going to shrink this down. And so now I can just copy one of these right over here. I'm going to copy this one. It's geometric. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it right here. And it automatically put it in my library, and it's putting it down here where I can use it in the fill pattern window. So I'm going to close out of here. We're going to go back to design. And so let's go down there and find that one. I have a lot of these. I'm a little obsessed with patterns. And these obviously, these don't have to be ornaments. They can really be a window hanger, anything you want. A car mirror hanger. Don't get too big so you obscure your vision though. Oh, it's going to take a minute to load. I'm going to go back in. There it is, right there. So I could make this, and I go to Advanced Options. I could scale this up quite a bit. And use it, but I just wanted to show you how that particular one works. So now I'm going to choose something I really want to use. And I want to tell you the bigger the scale, the better it's going to look. So you don't want to get too tiny, even though it might look good. When you get down to it, it really is better when it's smaller. Let's see if I can find one that, oh, here's a steampunk one. That's kind of a fun one to work with. And this is a pattern, I have this pattern actually for sale in the Craftcast store. I love this steampunk pattern. So I'm going to zoom it down. Now you can be symmetrical or asymmetrical. I'm going to take a big risk and be asymmetrical. It's not really my forte always. Oh, but it looks so nice centered. I think maybe I'll center it. No, maybe not. So we're going to go like that. And now I'm ready to trace. Now, two options. You can have a line around the outside or not. Sometimes I like a line, sometimes I don't. It depends on the pattern. If it's a picture, you obviously don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Trace. I'm going to select the trace area. And what's going to happen is the line is very, very tiny. And I think with this pattern I'm going to like it, but we're going to have to wait and see. I like to put my low pass filter on. It simplifies things, but I will tell you the simplify point editing actually works now. So you don't need to worry so much about that. Also, scale is been added to the beta, and that works really well also. So I'm not seeing much yellow along the outside, so I'm going to actually thicken this up. And what that'll do is when I thicken up the line, all of a sudden it'll trace. So I've got my low pass to 1, which will simplify things, my scale to 4, and I've got the high pass filter off on this one. I'm going to trace, and here we go. Here's my image. Here's a tracing of the image. It isn't actually filled yet. I want to tell you something. If you have an older or slower computer, what you want to do at this point is you want to get rid of the picture. The picture takes up at least a third of the room when you save the file, so I always get rid of it because when I save the file I want it to be usable. And what I can do about this with this point is I'm going to duplicate this. And I like to duplicate so I can play. So what I can do is I can fill it with color, and I fill it with black just to see what the etching will look like. And then I'm going to release the compound path, and I'm going to delete one layer. Make it a compound path. And then I'm going to fill this with color. So that would be a very different look. I think I'm going to go with the basic because I love the clear where you can see through. But this is an interesting option also. And I want to show you that's how the negative and positive works with the SIL software. It's kind of cool. If you remove an outside border, all of a sudden it'll fill differently. So I'm going to delete that. So I have my tracing. And filling with black was very nice, but that's not going to do me a lick of good when it gets down to etching. So with it selected, I'm going to change the color back to nothing. And now I'm going to use the curio fills. Remember, I've increased it to 300%. So I'm going to go over to the curio fills. I'm going to delete some of these other ones. Okay, so the one I like to use for etching is this crosshatch fill. It is the most aggressive, and we want to be as aggressive as possible. I'm going to take this all the way to the left, and occasionally this will lag up your computer. Don't worry, just give it a minute. And sometimes it'll pop you over to the library. They're kind of working on this image. It goes a little quicker in the version 201, but I really, really like this. Okay, so once it's done, I'm going to zoom down in because everything etches better tight. And this is like a crazy tight crosshatch. So that'll make a lovely etch. And it'll take quite a bit of time. So I'm going to release the emboss. Very important step, because if you do not release the emboss, when you shrink it back down, it'll change the size. And we're very happy with this etch size. So now I'm going to go over to the scale window. And I'm going to put in 33.33% because the 33 in the scale is not working. That should be fixed pretty quickly. I'm going to hit apply, and it's going to shrink it down to the right size. We're going to zoom in, and then I'm going to move it over here. Now this is another case where I'm going to want to release the compound path because I don't want it to center with that hole in there. So let's zoom in. Release compound path. Then I'm going to click on the outside, hit the shift key, and click on the inside, and then I'm going to center it using the center button. Love that new center button. Once I've got it exactly where I want it, and again, look at it to make sure, occasionally things that will center oddly, so do give it a quick look. Once I've got that done, I'm going to draw a drag box around everything, and it's going to select everything I have, and then I want to group, because we know when we make a compound path, we cannot have separate colors. So I want to group. Immediately upon centering, you want to group. It's very, very important to be consistent with that, because otherwise you might get something that's off a little bit. So now I'm ready to actually put the design in the template. I'm going to copy. We're going to go back to the template file and paste. And there she is. Now I have to zoom myself in so I can actually see what I'm doing. First thing I want to do is I've accidentally moved this, so I want to center this to the page. Then I'm going to take my ornament and I'm going to put it in whichever hole I'm going to put it in. Very important that you get it right over the line. I'm going to zoom in because depending on your computer or your eyes, which is my problem, you see down here it's not quite centered. So you really need to get up close. Now we've got it done. And that's exactly in the right place. We are going to put protective film onto our mat. We are going to remove the 2mm platform. We are going to put the template on top of our stack, because the template needs to be on there right with the top very even to the rest of the mat. And then we are going to actually add your ornament into the slot. I like to take a speedball burnisher or a brayer, and I bray it on there really good. Occasionally it'll get caught up in the plastic. You want to make sure you push down, you know, like if a little edge is in the plastic, it won't be attached, and it will move. If it's not well attached to the protective film, it will move. The protective film will also protect your mat, which is really important. Jamie will also, with the template, gave you some things you could cover the other holes if you didn't put protective film under those. Okay, so now we're ready to send to the silhouette. This is pretty darn easy. I want to warn you of one thing. You do not want to send to the silhouette with a force of 33. This tool is very low down in the holder. If you stress it, it's going to move and it's going to cause stress on your machine. I've figured out with Jamie and some other people with the silhouette etcher, I'm going to use about a 17. So we're going to go to send. And I never use simple, I always use line color. So if you default on simple, it will look like this. And if you see all red, you know you're in the wrong place. We'll go to line color because I've color coded the blue to be etching. Now if you've got two blues, which I do, if you uncheck, it won't be lit up. So there we go. And I'm going to show you how to add the user-defined setting, even though we already have it in there. I'm going to go to Material. I'm going to say Add New Material Type. And unfortunately, you can't change the name here. We're going to change the name in a minute. But we always want to be on Etch. I will tell you, Cut will give you a totally different, imprecise result. So we're going to add an Etch action. As soon as I add an etch action, I'm going to go and remove the cut action. It's very important when you're etching not to be able to accidentally choose cut, or it won't look good. I'm going to put the speed at 10. We want to go as fast as possible because this takes a lot of time. I'm going to make the force 17. And because we're using this for decorative purposes and we've done a very tight hatch fill, we're just going to do one pass. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to right click. I'm going to rename that new material. I'm going to call it Acrylic Sill Tip. And we can say 3 millimeters. And I actually can go down here and change this to 4 platforms. Platforms is for notation only, but you actually might see it at some point and it might clue you in that we need to do this. So I'm going to choose Save. I'm going to choose, and so it's all saved. And now we're going to go and use it. So as soon as you've got that done, you need to X out of the screen. And let's find that setting. Now the silhouette settings are all first. I have lots of acrylics because I test this all the time. Okay, where's the one? Oh, the one I just added will be down at the beginning, and then it'll when you reopen the machine, it'll alphabetize it. Down at the bottom, sorry. Okay, so we've got our setting. We want to check and make sure it says Etch. When you have the line selected, you can look down here and make sure that's what you want. It's always good to check your settings. And the tool will be in the left-hand holder. And we're going to send to the silhouette. And when you send to the silhouette, it's going to put a number on there. And the number will show you about how long it'll take. The number isn't really consistent, but the one at the beginning is pretty close. So I want to tell you that that's a good number to use. We're going to send the silhouette, and we're done. I want to also talk to you about placement. I promised during class that I would do this. There are some cases where you have a shape usually from Jamie, because she has so many shapes, and you want to be able to do it, but you don't have the template. You can actually cut your own templates. You can send her a note and ask for a copy of the digital file so you can actually use it. So if you have, and this one you already have the digital file, and I think it's the prettiest ornament. I just love it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to show you how I would do this without a template. Very easy on placement. So let's go over to where I have this one. If you didn't have it here, you could paste it. So this one is centered to the page. What I want to do is I'm going to move it. You remember our grid on our curio is very well calibrated. So if you've got your etcher in the left-hand holder and you place the ornament, so the very top, and you want to zoom in to make sure the very top is touching this line, and the very left side is touching the left line, just touching, not over. You are going to be perfectly set if you put the actual ornament on protective film on the mat in the exact same place. So even with a complicated shape like this, if I have the proper sizing, which I measure. I actually measure the ornament to be sure, because there is a version of these that's 1.5 inches, which is really cute too for a tiny Christmas tree. So I've measured, I'm making sure it's the right size. I'm going to put it like this. So this is a complicated shape, but the easier shapes, obviously if you have a square, you just put it on the grid. But the circles are also very easy to do, and I want to show you that. So Jamie has some 2-inch circles, which I love. I'm going to make sure my circle is exactly right, and I have the aspect ratio locked. So it's 2 inches all the way around. We're going to zoom in and make sure that it's in just the right place. And so if you center it within those 4 squares, your design is going to be perfectly in the center, or pretty close to perfect, if you place it in the same place. A little trickier with 1.5 inches, so let's switch that. Or 2.5 inches. We're going to use the same theory we used as over here. We're going to take it and we are going to put it right there. So if you have something from someone else or a different shape, you could actually put it on the PicScan mat and have the computer scan it, and then copy to another file and just do the same tracing, making sure that everything's in the right place. But I think this is a really easy method, as long as you're in the right place. And this is how I did the earring holder, which is a pretty complicated design. And I did not have a template. So best of luck and have a lot of fun.